So again, I'm Kersten Geers,
David van Severen.
and well, we've been in the archives for about almost 2 weeks now. Of course, a bit less, but quite some days. We've been working a lot also on the digital archives, but it was probably a good idea to show some very tangible objects, we feel very attracted to.
Yeah. So what we show here is a selection. We found it today, let's say, or during these 2 weeks. The model is the first thing we see today. It's beautiful. It's a Usera library. We were very skeptical in the sense that we didn't know they made a lot of models, but then pulling this out was really a surprise, especially in seeing how they made basically boxes, but beautiful boxes.
So, I mean, without really telling now what we're working on, we did look a lot to, as David just said, to different boxes. So, where Usera is probably the most sublime of them, very precise, very well designed, with a very beautiful model as well. Maybe on the other end of the spectrum, there's this set of what looks like collages, but are not really collages, of an IKEA industrial box, a big supermarket. There's many of them. I mean, here on the top, there's one set, and this it looks like an interesting, how to say, negotiation between what is an IKEA, obviously, which is its color scheme, the big letters, and then looking on how a box as simple as that gets a twist. So there's a different set of tests on how somehow a roofline, the specific objects on the top seem to play a role. This is like one version where you see the very small IKEA words printed all over. There's different other options they tried. And for us it was quite a different document from what we knew. I mean, I guess David will talk a little bit about that, but we've been studying both with them. And so Usera Library is about a design of about that time. So we know that project very well. Of course, it became a project which was emblematic for their work. Whereas this IKEA box, which isn't so much from a different period, more or less developed around the same time, is them really, it seems, entering the most banal of building programs. I mean, where generally people would not do any architecture. So, and also then this technique, which has, I mean, with a certain romanticizing perhaps, has something in common with this Edrochet-like perspectives, where only the front facade becomes, the representation of what is the building. And in all the banality of word and volume and color, it's maybe possible to make something special. So yeah, I mean, so there's many, and we're of course very careful with the material, and they're more or less all the same.
Yeah, they're also just prints. In a way, in the end, we thought, or first we thought they were collage, but we discovered they have this kind of 90s inkjet quality. They're basically inkjet prints on quite special paper. But what is also interesting is that it's kind of a reproduction again of something they made in the computer, basically. But as Kersten was saying, it's really this kind of fascination for almost an industrial approach to architecture that we were looking at. And also, when we were there, both, well, Kersten was there before me in the 99 or 8?
I think 7 or 8.
Yeah, and I was there in 2000. That's exactly this moment where all these fascinations of them, they accumulated into this, let's say, Usera library, other projects like the Retiro Park box, but also the teaching we got at the time we found back in the archive. So these are slides, very beautiful set of teaching slides basically, and they show projects that all are references for them and that show exactly these fascinations for first of all America, like towers and typical plans, but then also contemporary architecture. So if you look at these slides, you see Koloff, the Atlampol, you see Jean Nouvel, Tour Sans Fin. You see at the same time, you see there the John Hancock building of SOM, or even Dominique Perrault, Hotel Industriel. So and again here others, lots of fascinations for obviously Colas also, but you see, I mean, it's difficult to show this on the movie, but they have this kind of almost technocratic interest in how architecture can be made and how it's almost like a composition of different elements they find in the world. And it's very, very interesting to look back at the slides, because again, this is a moment for us that you know, it brings up all these memories.
Yeah. That's true, and going back to Ezera to a certain extent, the material we find is often quite uneven. I mean, there's a bit of drawings. We said before, we spend a lot of time in the digital archives because there's a lot of, in a way, CAD drawings, which were almost fundamental to what the production was, somehow very close to a certain way of approaching architecture. And then it's fascinating to find the building represented in a model that precise. Of course, probably a representation model, maybe for the competition. And all of a sudden, you see that actually in the model and the way everything is treated, so you see the building itself, you see the landscaping, you see that relationship between building and landscaping. The landscaping still extremely simple and somehow pragmatic. You see what has always fascinated us, I think, and not only us, this idea of, I mean, there's a certain promise of a building. So there's this paneling, and the paneling seems to suggest that things go open and close. But then here, and you see some of the panels fell off, the fixed panels, which are of course at the same time a sun protection, but are just simply there, always suggesting their movability under the fact that they're movable, but they're not. Yeah. So for that reason, of course, this model, I mean, is quite a find.